My name is Marc Vanlerberghe, and I'm the CEO of Ruleye. A quick introduction about the company. So we are a conversational AI company focused on helping enterprise customers build advanced virtual assistants. Let me see if I can move the slides here. There we go. Yep. So the whole topic of virtual assistants, of course, has become a hot topic as contact centers around the world have seen massive disruption from COVID-19. But we think that there's more going on than just that. And I want to explore some of the trends that we're seeing today and also offer some advice into how conversational technologies can help. The second part of the speech, I also want to talk about some of the issues that banks are struggling with, which is how to manage these AI projects and how to basically create successful virtual assistants, which is always easier than it sounds. Anyways, at the bottom of the screen, you'll see this URL here. We have this presentation available from the URL. We also put some additional resources there that we think might be useful. Of course, it also has my email address. So if you ever want to talk to us about this in more detail, we'd be happy to do that. So 2 words about Ruleye. You know, when you think about AI, lots of people think that AI is going to be a massive job killer. And we actually don't believe in this kind of dark vision. When we look at how companies actually use our technology, we see that virtual assistants are not replacing jobs. They are basically complementing the work of human workers. And we believe that advanced AI will actually lead to a new type of balance between virtual and human workers and result in an exceptional customer experience. And that's ultimately what this is about, right? It's about delivering an exceptional customer experience. And the previous speaker talked about the quote from Jeff Bezos about what is not going to change in the next 10 years. In our view, it is very clear what is not going to change. What is not going to change is the necessity to offer an exceptional customer experience. And so consumers' behaviors are changing, and consumers have been trained by digital native companies to expect their needs to be met instantly and in a frictionless and seamless way. And so therefore the customer experience and the customer expectations are changing. Therefore the focus of banks and companies to focus on this is becoming ever more important. And banks and other companies will have to find the right balance between human workers and AI workers to be able to deliver on this idea of an exceptional customer experience. Ruleye, as I mentioned, is focused on helping companies build these virtual assistants. And we've been fortunate enough to work with some of the largest companies in the world to do this. We've also been recognized by Forrester and Gartner for the work that we've done in conversational AI. And Forbes recently selected us as one of the most promising AI companies in the US, of course, for which we're grateful. But that's enough about Ruleye. So let's talk about the trends that we're seeing as a result of this COVID disruption. And my slide deck first had as a title, Banking in a Post-COVID-19 World. And I started realizing as we go through this phase of massive disruption, that the right way to talk about this is banking in a COVID-19 world, not in a post-COVID-19 world, because I think that things will change radically and they will never go back to what they were before. And so a lot of analysts and a lot of consultants have done a lot of research in the last couple of months to analyze what is going to change. And I want to kind of share some of the insights that we've seen. PwC did a study among CFOs, and 40% of the CFOs believe that automation and the new ways of working will accelerate dramatically as a result of the COVID-19 disruption. That's one data point. Bain & Company is talking a lot about the shift in terms of companies' priorities. Companies tend to be focused on predictability. How do I predict my business? How do I create a stable business and predict where things are going? And companies have to rethink that whole kind of mental model and switch from predictability to acting fast and adapting fast and being agile as being more important than being predictable. That was a point of view from Bain. And McKinsey is talking a lot about digital digital strategies. And everybody knows that as a result of this crisis, digital strategy is going to have to accelerate. And they talk about bold learning at scale. Funny comment that they talk about, it's time to get over with the digital lipsticks. And so these are kind of the massive, like the big kind of impacts that we see, both from PwC, Bain, and McKinsey. But I want to talk a little bit more specifically about the trends as it relates to banking and how conversational technologies might be able to help there. Okay, so what is the first trend? We think there's going to be a big change in customer information needs as a result of this crisis. And let's think about this. We think about this in three different categories. One is increased safety-related questions. These are questions no consumer has asked in the past, whereas suddenly a lot of consumers are asking these questions, specifically if you think about retail banking, right? What are your opening hours? They are changing, right? They're not necessarily the ones that are on Google Maps and not necessarily the right ones anymore, right? So they're asking you, what are your opening hours? They're asking you, is it safe to come bank with you, right? Is it safe to come into your retail locations, right? What are your cleaning procedures, right? Do you practice social distancing? And so consumers have a lot of worry about actually stepping into physical locations and want to make sure that when they do so, things will be safe. And so as a bank, you have to get ready to be able to answer those types of questions. Second thing, a lot of the previous speakers talked about the fact that the economy is getting a major hit and consumers are becoming cash strapped. This will generate a whole series of questions that existed before, but in terms of importance, and importance in terms of volume will increase significantly, right? Can I increase my credit card limit? Can I delay my loan payments? I'm falling behind on my car payments. What do I do? Can I restructure my mortgage? These types of questions, as I said, always existed, but the volume of questions in this area will increase significantly. And then the third element is that many banks, many of you have loyalty programs, right, where people can buy tickets, can book hotels, can book a flight, and of course, all of these things have been massively disrupted, right? And as a result of that, a lot of customer support questions and contact centers are hit with questions that have to do with flight cancellations. Can I get a refund? Does my credit card travel insurance cover COVID-19 cases? Can I cancel my hotel without penalty? A whole series of questions that didn't exist before are just starting to pop up. And this is not something in the future. All of your contact centers today are struggling with this, right? And you don't have to search far on Twitter to find examples of customers being very annoyed at the fact that they have to wait a very, very, very long time to get an answer, if they ever get an answer. And so contact centers currently are so overloaded that it takes hours and hours and hours for people to actually get through. And I don't want to pick on any particular bank because I think this is a pain that is being felt by everybody today, as you can see from all of the comments that you see on Twitter. So how do you deal with this, right? Well, I think everybody's trying to deal with this in the best way that they seem possible. And so you see a lot of this happening, right? This is an example. Again, I don't want to pick on any particular bank because everybody's struggling with this. This is a particular example from Chase. So if you want to basically get help, they have a specific page that they put together for COVID-19 related issues. And so they're basically trying to help you find, answers to the questions that you have. But as you can see, it is very, very complicated. And what I'm showing you is an excerpt of a page that is 3 times as long as what you see here, right? So it's very complicated. And so what you see happening is that the bank are putting the internal complexity and then shifting that internal complexity onto the consumer. And so consumer now has to become a specialist in how the bank is organized to be able to find an answer to the questions that they have. And so while helpful, it is far from ideal. And so this is a theoretical question, but wouldn't this be much better, right? Wouldn't this be much better if you go to your bank website and there's a virtual assistant at the bottom that says, how can I help you? And the virtual assistant can handle any of the questions that I just raised. So how do we deal with changing customer information needs, right? And how can automation help? And it goes back to my initial request, or my initial point of view about humans and bots collaborating. So we think that bots ought to be used for high volume requests, while humans can handle high value requests. if you think about the questions I just raised, what's my opening hours? What are your cleaning procedures? Is it safe to come into the bank? Can I change my mortgage payment date? Stuff like that. You don't need human agents to deal with those questions. You can have a bot deal with these questions. These high volume questions are fairly straightforward and fairly easy for a virtual assistant to be able to handle. And so by basically shifting the high volume requests onto an automated service, you can save precious time for humans and human agents to handle the more high value request. And that is a fundamental shift that needs to happen within kind of the customer support, customer experience space. What does this mean concretely? First of all, from your call center perspective, right? Most companies, most banks still use traditional IVRs, which are very, very cumbersome, very difficult to program, very static, doesn't have any AI, right? Companies need to shift from a dumb IVR, if I may say so, to a conversational IVR that is AI driven and that can do a lot smarter things. The conversational IVR can do more than just routing calls. A conversational IVR can triage incoming calls and can resolve some of the calls, the high volume ones, can resolve them automatically without human involvement, can try to deflect some of these calls to digital chat channels, which are far more scalable because they're asynchronous, right? Can, if that doesn't work, can propose agent callback so that rather than a consumer waiting in line on hold for 1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, can basically propose an hour for the agent to call back at the consumer's convenience so the consumer doesn't have to wait. And only if that fails, right, escalate to human agent in real time. That way you can significantly reduce the amount of overload that your contact centers are having. And it's a far more scalable approach. Secondly, it means embedding these virtual assistants in your online channels, whether it's websites, whether it's apps, to try and resolve as many requests as possible, right, before you have to escalate to a live chat agent when necessary. And then the third element is, what does this mean for human agents, right? If the human agents are handling high volume requests and not the routine ones, then you have to think about how do you train those human agents, right? You can train them on other things. You don't have to train them on basic knowledge because the basic knowledge will be handled by a bot. But you can train them on empathy, and you can train them on becoming brand ambassadors, and you can train them on handling high touch requests. You don't have to train them on the routine stuff. You don't have to train them on procedures. You don't have to train them on the basic things because the bot can handle that much better than a human agent can. So that's trend number one. Changing customer information needs. Trend number two, and a lot of the previous speakers talked about this, is move to a digital first world. McKinsey did a lot of studies and analysis on this, and it's fascinating. You could clearly see as a result of COVID-19 new emerging consumer behaviors. 35%, according to McKinsey, of Gen Zers are using video chat for the first time, right? 54% of households over $100,000 have tried online streaming for the first time. And you see similar trends on the B2B side. Digital interaction with B2B customers is twice as important, it's becoming twice as important than traditional channels. And a fascinating study that McKinsey has done has shown that these behaviors, these new behaviors that consumers are learning are likely to stick. Consumers who start to buy groceries online are 50% more likely to permanently buy more groceries online. So these behaviors, these new behaviors are going to stick. So what does this mean from an automation perspective? Well, I think it's really important that banks figure out how to create exceptional self-service customer experiences. And from a conversational perspective and a conversational AI perspective, that means three things. One is making sure that whatever traditional workflow exists in the bank, that you have a digital equivalent that is as good or better than what your traditional workflow looks like. So it's not just about answering FAQs, right? Like in the trend number one, it goes much further than that. It's being able to orchestrate complex service actions and interactions, like handling credit card disputes, inquiries, doing account servicing, handling payments, handling transfers, of course, always with human fallback, right? It's also from a sales perspective, right? Have automation handle new product recommendations and applications, like for instance, applying for a new loan, right? Applying for a new credit card, applying for mortgages, applying for new accounts, all these things, right, that typically are cumbersome and take a lot of time, can now be automated with human fallback. And the third piece is expand online banking to conversational channels. And you can put a bot on a website, and you can do a bot on an app. But most consumers are mobile, most consumers are using their phone, and the preferred interaction channel on mobile phones is not websites, not even mobile websites. The preferred interaction model for consumers on mobile phones is messaging based, right? Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. The previous speaker gave a lot of examples on WeChat. Those are the preferred messaging channels, right? So how does a bank live where the customer lives is a critical question that you have to answer. That means pushing these banking services and having your personal banker sit next to you wherever you as a consumer are, which means in Facebook Messenger, which means in WhatsApp, which means in WeChat. If I'm at home and I'm not sitting in front of the computer, where's my banker, right? My banker is sitting right inside Alexa. It's sitting right inside the Google Assistant. And so how do you figure out, how do you create some of these workflows and these interaction models, and how do you build them for a conversational world, whether it's mobile, like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, or voice and home-based, as Alexa and Google Assistant is. That's trend number 2. Trend number 3 is around physical safety and work from home. Right? The previous study that I showed you about PwC also asked about work from home, and 62% of the financial services CFOs believe that remote work will become an option for roles that allow it. So you'll see a big shift of people starting to work from home and do so permanently. At the same time, you still want and expect a portion of your employees to show up in physical locations at the workforce, at the office. And so what does that now mean from an automation perspective? It's very important that as we go back to work, that you have the procedures and the processes in place to convince your employees that they will be safe going back to home. The same way as you need to make sure you can convince your consumers that, and your customers, that it's safe to walk into a branch office, the same thing is true for your employees. You have to make sure your employees feel comfortable coming back to work. And as you've probably seen, a lot of the workers at Amazon and FedEx last week went on strike because they felt that the workplace environment was not conducive to a safe environment. And so they were worried about catching the virus. So what do you do as a company to make sure your employees feel comfortable and safe going back to work? And then secondly, how do you support the needs of the people that work from home, specifically customer support agents, right? How do you make sure that they can do their job and are productive in a work from home environment? And so this is how automation can help. One is contact tracing, right? Everybody is talking about contact tracing. Every single large city, every single state, every single government is putting in place contact tracing bots and contact tracing programs. And they're all doing it in an incredibly fast pace, right? Where, for instance, the state of Massachusetts is trying to hire more than 1,000 contact tracing agents over the course of a couple of weeks. We believe that companies will have to figure out their own version of this, right? Because if you have a lot of people sitting at the office, it's going to be practically impossible to keep everybody 6 feet apart. And so having a contact tracing mechanism to very, very quickly discover when somebody's ill and then make sure that people that were in the immediate environment and immediate collaborators that work very closely with that person are being alerted that they may be exposed is going to be important to give the employees the confidence that you have the mechanisms in place to do so. And bots can basically help agents achieve that task. Secondly, from a work from home environment, agent assist bots become very important, because if your customer service agents work from a central location, they can get help from a supervisor, they can help from colleagues, they can get help from everybody around them. When they're sitting at home, they don't have that immediate support network anymore. And so a lot of our customers start to think about how do you deploy agent assist bots that basically virtually look over the shoulder of an agent at home and guide that agent with NESPEX action, guide them with knowledge, guide them with interactive standard operating procedures or job aids, and help them do their work while being at home. And then the third element where bots can help is on the overall kind of productivity space. Like if you move agents to a home environment, these agents will have a lot of questions. They have a lot of questions about IT support. How do I set up my PC at home? How do I connect to corporate VPN? How do I do this and that? How do I change my password? And so you could significantly build up your IT help desk and hire more people to do so, or you can try and deploy bots that will automatically handle many of those requests. And so you start seeing, automated bots that handle IT help desk, that handle HR help desk, dealing with vacation and policies, that handle operational help desk, dealing with shifts and shift management of contact center employees, as well as dealing with agent training and onboarding. So these are all ways where conversational AI technologies and bots can actually help ensure physical safety and make sure that agents who work from home are productive. So those are the three big trends that we see. So now the next question becomes, how do you manage those projects? Because chatbots and virtual assistants have been around for a long time, right? They've been around for a long time, and they've mainly not been good. A lot of the virtual assistants you see out there don't do a good job, get confused easily. And it feels in the eyes of consumers that many of these bots are dumb bots, right? Secondly, a lot of companies have been struggling with deploying this technology, and it always takes far more time and effort and cost to deploy these things than they originally anticipated. And we see horror stories of virtual assistant projects, specifically within banks, that have taken a year or more to deploy and had kind of mediocre results. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, because I think it's a really important component. How do you kind of create these types of projects, and how do you move quickly with speed and agility on these things, and not take a year to launch a virtual assistant? And so the way we think about this is that the managing an AI, and this is what's new, managing an AI project is actually very different from managing a typical IT project. And so when you think about an AI worker, a virtual assistant, an AI worker actually has a lot in common with a human worker. You want people to be smart. You want people to be action-oriented. You want people to be fast learners, get their job done fast. And you want people to be flexible, to do multiple things. The same is actually true for a virtual assistant. And thinking about that in that framework will help you analyze and figure out, how to pick the right virtual assistant platforms, as well as figure out how you manage operationally an AI project and how you deploy. And let me talk in a little bit more detail about this. So we call this the SAFE model for AI workers. The first one is about smart. And this is where the first problem starts. As I said before, many of the virtual assistants that you find in the marketplace are not very smart. And the reason why they're not very smart is because while they may be able to understand what you say, right, they are not able to kind of manage an ongoing conversation very well. This is where most bots fail, right? They try to, and this is, if you think about most of the technology providers in this space, they all focus on providing an NLU, a natural language understanding, which means trying to understand what the consumer says. But very few of these bots try to manage an ongoing conversation that has that's multi-round, that has multiple steps. And the way most bot platforms work is that they handle the multi-round by using a decision tree approach, which is rigid. And you can do that if the conversation is short, but when the conversation becomes longer, right, and the consumer deviates from the decision tree, the bot gets confused and gives up. And that's when people say you have a dumb bot. And so let me show you an example of what a kind of traditional bot, a dumb bot, looks like. And I'll try and play this video if I can. So this is an example of what we call a level 2 virtual assistant, a bot that is able to understand what you say, but follows a rigid decision tree approach to kind of manage the process. Let's see if I can play this. I cannot play this. Yeah, I don't know how to play a video controlling it remotely. Can the Catapult team play this video?
Yeah, if you just pause on the slide there, Mark, we'll give that a go, okay? So just sit tight. We'll see if the tech team can get it playing, okay?
If it's too hard, I can let's skip it. Let's skip it.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
it appears that it's a Google Drive link that's actually in the deck there, I think, Mark. So maybe if you want to just bring it to life without the video and just talk through the experiences.
yeah,
I don't think it's
yeah,
embedded in the physical presentation. Okay.
sure.
So
So let me continue. What basically, um, um, let me switch to the next one. So basically, the difference between most traditional bots that you see out there is that, as I said, the way they manage a dialogue is rigid. So, for instance, if you have a bot that says, "Okay, I want to do wire transfer," and the bot says, "Sure, from which account?" And the customer says, "From my checking account." And the bot says, "Okay, how much money do you want to wire over?" "Oh, I want to wire over $200. And then the bot says, "Where do you want to wire it over to?" And then the consumer says, "Oh, by the way, how much money is in my checking account?" That's where most traditional bots will fail, because that answer doesn't match their decision tree and their process flow. And so it's what's called a context switch, right? And so being able to kind of manage those context switch requires advanced dialogue management capabilities, which is a capability that is very new and that is not available in most bot platforms today. And that's critical because, as you recall, when I talk about the second trend, which is kind of looking at the complex workflows that the bank have and making a conversational digital version of that, these complex workflows take multiple steps to execute. And so if a bot is not capable of managing an ongoing conversation in a context sensitive way, then there's no way that you can basically take these complex workflows and put them online. You need a level 3 virtual assistant that is capable of handling, dialogue management in a context sensitive way to be able to do these things. And I can share the videos later if you're interested in that, and the URL below on this slide deck will have it as well. So let me move on. So that's smart, very important. The second one is action-oriented. Again, thinking back of these complex workflows, right? A bot should do more than just Q&A, right? It's easy to create a bot that does Q&A, right? But the bot that basically handles transactions, handles credit card disputes, handles insurance quotes, is a much more complicated bot to pull off because it requires integration with several backend systems to be able to execute the task that it does. And so in any kind of conversational platform that you're looking for, you have to make sure you have the right type of integration capabilities to be able to create and orchestrate these complicated workflows. So look for API integration capabilities, look for RPA integration as important characteristics of a conversational AI platform. The third piece is about fast learning. And this is very critical because this is where a lot of projects will take 6 months to a year to release. So a bot cannot invent its job, right? You have to teach a bot what to do, right? So therefore you have to feed the bot with knowledge, your internal knowledge database, knowledge base. Secondly, you have to teach a bot on how to get how to get tasks done. So if you want the bot to be able to do a wire transfer, you have to teach the bot what the exact workflow is on how to execute a wire transfer, right? So thirdly, you have to provide the bot with training data, right? Because there's many ways in which a customer can ask a question, right? So you have to provide the bot with training data, right? And then finally, after you do all of that, the bot has to learn, because guess what? After you launch a bot, the bot will get confused because you didn't think about that use case and the bot didn't know how to handle that use case, or the bot didn't have enough training data in that particular area and the bot gets confused because it doesn't understand what the customer is saying. So you have to be able to very quickly identify gaps and issues and then improve the bot to be able to do that. This is a very complex workflow. And so to look for are basically accelerators, like companies that can basically very quickly grab company knowledge bases, grab workflows, grab training data from historical transcripts, and then import those into a bot platform. So you get a head start in terms of building these advanced bots. Secondly, you definitely need a recommendation engine that basically self-analyzes the bot behavior and then based on the gaps and issues recommends to the designer on how to make things better. That's number 3. And then and that will save you months and months and months of time if you do it right. And then the fourth piece is extensible, right? A lot of the bot solutions you see are single point, which means they do one thing and they do one thing well, right? But the number of use cases, as I've shown you from these trends, is so large, right, that you need to think about a platform that is omni-channel, right? That can live inside an app, that can live on a website, that can live in your call center as a conversational IVR, voice IVR, that can live on messaging channels, right? And that is all connected to the same smart engine behind it, so that the consistency of experience is the same. And so that when a consumer switches from one channel to the other, the bot can just follow the consumer along the road and remember what the history of the transaction with that consumer was as it moved from one channel to the other. And so omni-channel capabilities, integrating voice and text-based customer touchpoints and maintaining that state across the customer journey are critical components of any kind of enterprise-wide conversational AI platform. So those are the 4 characteristics to look for, and for any kind of conversational platform. And so I'm getting towards the end of the presentation. One of the issues that a lot of the banks are also struggling with is skills, right? Because what kind of skills do you need inside the company to be able to deploy and manage these types of virtual assistant projects? And so these skills are not necessarily very well understood or known, right? What kind of AI capabilities do I need, right? What kind of, how do you design a virtual assistant conversation? You need a conversational designer, right? What is a conversational designer? It's not somebody, it's somebody, of course, with design experience, but somebody who understands the art of creating a automated conversation between a human and a bot, and do it in such a way that the human accepts the idea of talking to a bot. And so there's a whole new skill that needs to be developed around conversational design. And so we work with a number of companies that actually help us deploy these types of solutions with large companies. And of course, you know many of those, like of course the Cognizants and the Deloittes. We also work a lot with contact center BPOs like TTEC and Sitel, and obviously with automation partners who can actually help us speed up the integration with backend systems, so the bot is powerful and can take a lot of action. And so this is how we think about it, and this is how and this is why companies and banks choose Ruleye. So not every bank has the resources of a Capital One or a Bank of America to completely build a virtual assistant from the ground up and do this at huge cost and expense to the bank. And so we basically provide an alternative to that homegrown approach to allow banks to actually get access to a very advanced all-in-one, if you want, conversation AI platform that is really designed to move fast. Like, it shouldn't take 6 months or a year to build an advanced virtual assistant. It should take 2 months, 3 months to build virtual assistant and have it up and running and have it be ready. And that's really what we focused on. We focus on helping banks and financial services companies get access to a very advanced conversation AI platform, right? And help them move to this conversational world at a very, very fast pace. And this is my last slide. And to show you how fast we move, we actually built a number of COVID-19 bots over the past month. We built a contact tracing bot that basically helps companies check what is going on and alert customers that have been alert employees that have been exposed to potentially exposed to the virus. We built an HR policy bot because we noticed that a lot of employees have a lot of questions as it relates to COVID-19. Like, how do what happens if I have symptoms? What symptoms are bad? What symptoms are okay? What do I do if I have symptoms? What's the impact on my sick leave? Can I work from home if I feel sick? Employees have a lot of questions as it relates to COVID-19. So we actually built an HR policy bot that takes all the public information from Johns Hopkins and from CDC and from the World Health Organization and makes that available as the Q&A inside the bot. And then we allow companies to then add on top of that, right, all of their internal policies on how they deal with this. So they have a standard resource that they can make available to employees on how to deal with COVID-19 related issues. We built a travel disruption bot that specifically handles common requests with travel cancellation, travel disruption. What's the status of my trip? Can I cancel my trip? Please cancel my trip, and do that very, very quickly. And we even built a PPP bot. So the previous speaker talked about the US program to help small business. There was a similar issue there, which is that banks had to basically put this PPP mechanism in place very, very quickly. But the problem with the PPP program is that the guidelines changed every day, right? And so the Small Business Administration was changing the rules as they go. So we built a bot that basically takes all the information from the Small Business Administration website, makes that available so that, and keeps it up to date, keeps it in sync. So whatever changes happen on the SBA side automatically get reflected in the PPP bot. And so these are just some examples of things that we've done very quickly and that can be done very, very quickly. Two more things I want to mention. If you're interested in that, and if you want to kind of learn how to build conversational AI systems and bots, we actually have a free conversational AI certification course coming up. Feel free to invite your designers and or developers. We have separate tracks for designers and developers. Feel free to send them this invitation. They can sign up. It's completely free. We've made the course available online, and so they're welcome to participate. And if you have any questions, we have specific office hours we set up for next week, so you can sign up very quickly there, and we can talk more about it. So that's me. Happy to take any questions.
Very good, Marc. Thank you. And we do have a few questions, which is great. And I know there's a slide in Marc's deck, which is his contact details and some URLs for some other test cases. They will be on the contact center on Monday, Marc. So we'll make sure your slide is in that deck. Okay.
Wonderful.
We can also arrange offline if you share them for some of those mini videos of the demos of the level 1, level 2 bots or level 0, level 1 bot to be, you know, put in there as well for folks to consume. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for a great session, and certainly it was highly focused towards COVID-19 as well, based on, you know, obviously recent events therein. So first question for you is in terms of communication of sensitive data, what data that could be described as GDPR type data or bank account data and so on. Is communication of that via WhatsApp and Alexa really an option?
That's a very good question. I think it very much depends on, I think this is an ongoing issue. I think that specifically if you think about, for instance, Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp, currently sensitive data and security around sensitive data is an issue because things are not encrypted end-to-end between a consumer and a bank. You see these companies that start moving towards end-to-end encryption between consumers, but the end-to-end encryption between consumers and bank is not there yet. But that shouldn't stop banks from like starting to move in that direction, right? And you, of course, think about the sensitive data, but there's a lot of interactions that you can do that don't require sensitive data. And what banks sometimes do is that they basically start the interaction, the conversation with consumers over these messaging channels, and as soon as it deals with sensitive data, they would basically provide a link to a website where then, you know, the consumer can sign in and continue the conversation there. And again, if you have an omni-channel based approach, the Facebook Messenger bot can pass the message to a bot that lives on your website, and that bot lives in your secure environment and continue the conversation in your channel, right? And over time, I'm sure that the likes of Facebook and others will continue to invest in this opportunity and will continue and will provide at some point, and they've already indicated that they want to do that, end-to-end encryption, which then allows you to kind of build more advanced services exclusively for that channel.
Very good.
But for now, it's going to have to be kind of a cross-channel approach.
Yeah, kind of an omni-channel handoff with sign into an app or whatever. Yeah, okay, gotcha. Another one, there's no doubt that virtual assistant bots will be better and smarter in the future, but is it the case that the data will continue to be limited, and how to overcome the data limitation problem, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of progress in how these virtual assistants have evolved over time. And as I mentioned in the presentation, one of the biggest changes that we've seen is the move from virtual assistants that just handle simple Q&A and cannot handle with high probability multi-round conversations to bots that are able to now handle multi-round conversations without getting confused. And those context-sensitive bots are the critical things that you need to be able to build these more advanced capabilities. And so bots have improved significantly over the last year or so as advances in AI have led to this. But the key thing to look for are platforms that have AI-driven dialogue managers and AI-driven dialogue management capabilities, because that's the most critical component here.
I remember some of your sessions before. Is it the level 3 bots that don't exist, or level 4 do not exist at this point in time? What's the ceiling again in terms of the level definition?
Yeah, so the level 3 bot is a bot that is able to handle not just natural language understanding, but also dialogue management. A level 3 bot ought to be able to answer any question and do any task that it has been instructed to do, no matter how you ask the question and no matter how the conversation goes. When you move to level 4, and that's the state of the art today, level 4 means that the bot actually, you don't have to teach the bot will basically figure out the answer by itself, right? By starting to use reasoning and logic. And the bot, you can create bots that are more outcome driven. So for instance, you can tell the bot, okay, this form needs to be completed. Go interview the customer to complete this form, right? And the bot figures out by itself, how to read the form, how to analyze the form, and how to basically then ask the questions to the consumer the right way to get this form completed. So you're starting to move into a world that is kind of more outcome driven, where you don't have to specify step by step what the bot has to do. That's level 4, and that's an area that we're working on very heavily, but there's no commercially available solutions in the marketplace today. And to do that, I think we're probably still more than 6 months to a year away, I think, from having the beginning of those types of solutions. But it's an area of investment for us that we heavily focused on.
And is that a research mode investment, or is it more getting the research fit for purpose for release, if that makes sense, and sort of a coding challenge, if you will, or development?
No, I think it's partly research. It's an unresolved kind of research problem. And so we've been lucky. One of our co-founders is a professor at the University of California in Santa Cruz, and she has over 20 years of experience in conversational AI research. And so she's bringing that type of research mindset to the company. And so most of the people in our company are PhDs in AI. And so they heavily focused on actually advancing the state of art of these AI technologies to get to bots that are even more performant than the ones that we can deliver today. And level 4 is definitely on the roadmap of something that they are heavily working on.
Superb. Okay. So 1.5 questions left, and that one is a yes/no answer, and we've about a minute to go or less. So do you guys have a Slack bot integration yet?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then finally, I think it's more an observation, but it's a good observation from, I think, one of our attendees. In the future, when Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp and other social media platforms can handle the customer banking service and interactions with the bank in the way you described, but perhaps with biometric authentication or voice authentication and so on, or some way of securely passing data on such a channel, right? We may not be in our mobile banking apps so much at that point in native mode. We may just use these other alternate channels and avoid using the app day to day, correct?
I think you'll see, you want, ultimately, the vision is that you want your banker next to you wherever you are. Right? And so if you're already in Facebook Messenger, then why not have your banker sit right there next to you, giving you advice and guiding you through the conversation? And so ultimately, you're going to get into a world where the engagement could be going up, right? The overall engagement that you have between the consumer and the bank will go up, right? Sure. And so maybe the number of clicks on an app will go down, but your overall engagement level will go up because you make the bank available to the consumer wherever that consumer is. So it makes it easy for the consumer to kind of interact with you, and the bank can start using more proactive notification-based approaches too, to alert you about things that are going wrong or give you advice on what to do. So your bank becomes your trusted advisor day in, day out, every minute of the day, and guide you no matter what channel you're in. So your overall engagement level will go up. The mix between channels may change.
Understood. Very good. We have another question about languages supported, as in French, German, Arabic, etc. We'll come to that offline with you. We'll post that in the content center, if that's okay.
Great.
Sure. So Marc, with that, pleasure talking to you again. Thanks again for your time.
Likewise.
And we'll speak to you soon. Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Kevin.